Good evening. Today is Wednesday, May 18th, 2005. I'm Chuck Scarborough. And tonight we have a very special program about citizenship in America that's been over 80 years in the making.
And I'm Sue Simmons, and we have the pleasure of celebrating, along with Stanford, honoring one of their own.
And I'm Len Berman, and tonight you'll also hear a unique family sports story that is sure to inspire.
In 1945, the greatest generation was coming home. When Fred Robbins returned from fighting World War II, he wanted to honor dedicated individuals on the home front. Mayor Charles Moore agreed, and the people of Stanford began a tradition to celebrate an individual who has demonstrated a belief in interfaith harmony, high standards of civic life, promotion of the public welfare, and earned distinction on a community-wide basis as their Citizen of the Year.
Father John Kelly was asked to secure a residence and establish the Church of the Sacred Heart on the west side of Stanford in 1923. By the time he retired 22 years later, Father Kelly had touched so many people's lives that he was chosen as Stanford's first ever Citizen of the Year. Fred Robbins' group, the Jewish War Veterans, were the sponsors of the 1945 event and have remained sponsors for the past 60 years.
Now, to keep costs down and to pay off the mortgage, Father Kelly asked parishioners to help out. And one of those who volunteered was Katie Robustelli, who would clean the church on Saturdays. Coincidentally, her grandson, Rick, is the 2004 Citizen of the Year.
We were living on a street maybe a quarter of a mile up the block, but we were always around the church because my mother was cleaning constantly. She didn't work by being employed, but she just gave her services and was cleaning the churches so that she had to bring the youngsters with her because she had no place to leave them.
Here we see Father Kelly and Rick's dad, Andy, on the church's baseball team.
Rick was born in 1950. A year later, in 1951, Andy was drafted into the National Football League by the LA Rams. Before moving 3,000 miles, Andy asked Walter Kennedy, who would go on to become Stanford's mayor, commissioner of the NBA, and the 1960 Citizen of the Year, what he should do. Walter told him to play it safe, stay home, teach, coach, and take care of his young family.
But throwing caution to the wind, Andy, Gene, and Rick moved to Los Angeles, where the Rams went on to be world champions.
The first time I went out was with Rick. It's the first time I was on a plane, and Rick and I had to stop in Chicago, and it was a little scary. And then, of course, when Bobby came and Lori, they were the three that were out in California with us. Rick went to school out there. Bobby was still a couple of years younger. So we really had the three of them out there and really had a good time out there with all the other players and their children.
Growing up, Rick got to watch his dad play in 8 World Championship games while his mom delivered him 8 brothers and sisters.
As I recall, Rick really didn't do too much. Whenever the kids were sick, when my mother and my father was traveling, it was always me and Lori who were up walking the kids. You know, I always like to tell Lori that if it wasn't for us, my mother would have never gotten any sleep, because Ricky was downstairs sleeping, really didn't know what was going on upstairs. No, on the serious side, he really didn't do too much, honest.
8 championship games in 15 years. These were great years for New York sports teams. Only the Yankees played in more championships than Andy, 13.
Poor Gene, can you imagine if Andy had played for the Yankees?
Well, it really shouldn't surprise anybody that Rick Robustelli enjoyed playing football. He started throwing the ball when he was still in diapers. At first, he must have been thinking two-way end like his dad.
Ricky is kind-hearted like he was as a kid growing up. Always concerned about the other team. We can't beat them by that much, or always concerned about somebody else's feelings, and just a true, sincere person.
Then something magical happened in 1961. That was the year the Giants got quarterback Y.A. Tittle. Rick actually got to warm up Tittle on the sidelines.
Now, let's see the picture of Y.A. And now let's take a look at the picture of our Citizen of the Year.
Looks like they were separated at birth.
That sure does.
No wonder Rick was switched to quarterback. And what a quarterback he was.
Well, I think Rick was a very methodical quarterback. I think that he studied what he had to do. He performed basically what the coaches wanted him to do, and he was part of the team. And as a quarterback, I think that he kind of reflected what the teams generally look for in quarterbacks.
I understand that NBA referee Bennett Salvador also fits into this story somehow.
That's right. The summer after his sophomore year at Stanford Catholic High School, Rick got his hand caught in a power lawnmower. Most people thought his football days were over. He nearly lost 2 fingers, had several operations, and was forced to sit out his junior year, but he never gave up. Rick went to every meeting, every practice, every game.
It was something. It was something special. I mean, that's what Rick was. Rick never gave up, always came back, no question.
He worked the sidelines and gave tips to his friend Bennett, who came in to take over as quarterback. Bennett appreciated the opportunity, appreciated Rick's help, and eventually even married Rick's sister, Lori.
We're at Newfield School, where 45 years ago, during my first Pop Warner football practice, I met a skinny little guy with a little cowlick right in the middle of his head that turned out to be the most fiercest competitor and the most loyal friend I've ever had in my life. For those 45 years, I have a lot of memories, and I'd like to share just a couple with you. Actually, when we went to Catholic High School, after Newfield School, I was actually a quarterback, and Ricky was too. In 1 year, I threw 24 touchdown passes. Ricky threw 26. You know, I was named All-State quarterback. Ricky was All-American. Ricky made the dean's list every year. I got called to the dean's office every year. And now he's Citizen of the Year? What am I doing here? I'm always coming second to this guy. Forget this stuff. I'm not doing it. Go, Rick, forget it. I'm not.
In Rick's senior year, Bennett started the first 2 games, won both of them. Rick, who by then had not played the game in almost 2 years, did get to play some. Then Bennett broke some ribs, and Rick got his chance to start against city rival Stanford High School. Rick completed his first 6 passes and finished 11 for 14 with a 14-8 victory.
You know, didn't Rick also play against Bobby Valentine, the former New York Mets manager?
Absolutely, Chuck. Bobby had led his Rippowam High School football team to the state championship in 1965. They were undefeated in 1966 through their first 8 games. Rick had guided Catholic High to 7 straight wins. They were 9-0. The big showdown was November 1966. The build-up was just incredible. Everyone in town was talking about the big game, the undefeated teams, marquee players, inter-city rivalry, the works. The paid crowd of 10,000 started lining up at 7 a.m. Rick fumbled the first play from scrimmage, and Rip immediately took a 6-0 lead. Defenses held, and neither team scored the rest of the half. Still playing with plastic protection on his hand, having come back from the depths where most people thought he would never, ever play again, Rick Robustelli faced the biggest sports gut check in his young career. In a script made for Hollywood, Rick fired 4 TD passes and led Catholic High to a 32-6 victory and the state championship.
There's no doubt in my mind that that game in '66 was the biggest game of my high school football career, and maybe yours too. And you won, my team lost. Matter of fact, I never played on a team that beat Catholic High, and that's because you were the symbol of Catholic High. I never beat you in racquetball either.
And the best way to describe Ricky is Pat O'Brien. You would have if they ever had the life of Pat O'Brien, Ricky should play him and vice versa. He was like, you know, the rest of us were the kids, you know, like Leo Gorcey and Hunts Hall. We should be in Boys Town, and Ricky was always the guy that would set you like, you know, he'd always give that, Ricky would always give that tensed up look like, I'm not so sure you should be doing that, and you know. So more like that is how I know Ricky Robustelli.
Rick's accomplishments were also recognized outside of Stanford. Rick and Bobby were both All-State that year. Rick was also selected All-American.
Understand that in college, Rick was such a nice guy, he still holds the school record for completions to the visiting teams.
Thank you, Sue. I'm sure Rick appreciates you pointing that out to our viewers. After being heavily recruited, up to 50 colleges wanted him, Rick chose University of Connecticut, and yes, he still holds the school record for interceptions. But 30-plus years later, he also still ranks in the top 10 in plays, passing attempts, completions, touchdowns, and total offense. Not bad for a kid who almost ended his career before it started.
It is absolutely important to understand that I feel his hand on my shoulder on a regular basis, which is to say, as a parent, as a citizen, as an individual who tries to think about how I can make contribution as a citizen, Rick's remarkable influence on me is felt.
There's a group of about 8 people that make the selection. And out of the 8 people, Rick stood out unbelievably because everybody knows him, they know what he has done for the community. But what's the best part about Rick is that he's such an unassuming individual. He does things in such a wonderful, quiet, unassuming way.
One of the things that a mayor gets to do in the city of Stamford without getting anyone else's permission, bypass the Board of Reps in other words, is issue a proclamation. And now for 10 years it's been my honor to issue a proclamation honoring the Citizen of the Year as chosen by the Jewish American War veterans. It is a particular pleasure today to announce that May 18th, 2005 is Rick Robustelli Day in the city of Stamford. It is our way of honoring him for everything that he's done for our community and honoring the Jewish American War veterans for this great tradition of service.
Rick is a founder of the Mickey Leone Jr. Foundation, which supports youth activities and scholarships, and works with Raise the Bar Foundation, which provides assistance to the families of children with cancer and other life-threatening illnesses.
What makes Rick very important to me is a personal story, and so Rick, I apologize in advance for sharing this with so many, but back in April of 1995, approximately 10 years ago, I was flying back from Asia because my sister was gravely ill and at Sloan Kettering. And I remember arriving on the red eye at Kennedy, and the stewardess opened the door to the jetway, and the first person standing there was Rick. And of course I was very, very surprised, and I asked him, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Listen, I just wanted to make sure you were okay." We walked out, talked about my sister, got out to the parking lot. I assured him I was fine and had a ride into the city. And he said okay, rather matter-of-factly, and said he was going now back home and going to work.
He was active with the opening of UConn Stamford, and for 25 years remained deeply involved with Trinity Catholic High School scholarship and fundraising. Rick helped organize the Stamford Swedish Youth Hockey and Cultural Exchange Program, and he held leadership positions with Little League, Girls Babe Ruth, Pop Warner, the Allison Rue Foundation, and Stamford Youth Basketball. His company, Robustelli Corporate Services, supports many more nonprofit organizations, including the YMCA, the Stamford Public Education Foundation, Stamford Health Systems.
He is the type of person who you can go to when you have problems, talk it through with him. Don't always get the answer you want to get, but he'll always tell you the truth. And he leads the ship with my father. I mean, he is the person who keeps us where we are and the personality of what we have as a business.
He's always done it with purpose and a strong hand. He's always been there to help every one of the employees at Robustelli. He's taken a lot from his dad in terms of strict leadership, and we couldn't have a better one.
We certainly enjoyed honoring Rick Robustelli and congratulate his family, especially his high school sweetheart and wife of 32 years, Kathy, and their 4 wonderful children, Mark, Katie, Emily, and Greg.
I think if I were to try to pick one word, is humble. He's competitive by nature, but extremely modest in demeanor. He comports himself in a way that I'm quite proud of.
Our final words tonight are from the people of Stamford, who have benefited from the time, the effort, and the generosity of Rick Robustelli, Stamford Citizen of the Year 2004.
Rick cares about this community and has demonstrated that by really caring about its young people and seeing that young people have the opportunities that they should have to participate in sports at high school or in other programs, whether it's at the ice rink or on a football field or a baseball diamond. It really doesn't make any difference as long as we're giving people an opportunity. And Rick has been vitally important in that endeavor for many, many years. Not much of an athlete, though.
Rick, if there's anybody that deserves this award, you deserve it, because I don't believe that there's anybody around here that does more for the community than you do. God bless you, and I wish you well.
Rick, I want to congratulate you on this night. It's a great honor that you're receiving, but it's also an honor for these folks to have you on their list, because I know of no better person that ever could have gotten this award who will ever get it in the future. You are a #1 in my book, always have been, always will be, and as far as I'm concerned, it's an honor tonight for me to be here and to be part of this video presentation.
Rick, in conclusion, I would just like to say congratulations. You're aware of how important and significant this award is from the Jewish War veterans. It's a recognition of you as their annual, yearly Citizen of the Year. But I'd like you to know that you are my lifetime citizen. Thank you for all you do.
Rick, I just want to take a minute to, in closing, say congratulations. This award couldn't be offered